Thank you so much for coming to this evening event. I wanted very much to have Mihaela with me because as it was presented in the introduction, my interest is in interdisciplinary research. This is how I do my writing. I do interdisciplinary research, and to me, to find the voice that belongs to a different field of study is always very interesting. So I'm very grateful that Mihaela is here with me, and she will join me later in conversation. I was born in Romania, and I came to the United States 20 years ago, and I was in Indiana for 7 years, and then we moved to New Jersey, and we have been living there since 2005. I grew up in a family with a lot of feminine energy. There was my father, my mother, my maternal grandmother, and my older sister. And growing up, my older sister always got into this competition, and it's very familiar for, I think, everybody in the room. They are called in Romanian Olympiade, so they are specific, for math, physics, literature. So my older sister always got into this local competitions, and then she got into the national competition, and she came back home with awards. And meanwhile, I was watching soccer games with my father. Everybody knew that my older sister, would pursue this field of becoming a professor, a writer, and they didn't know what to do with me. So there was that, which in retrospect, it was very liberating because I didn't have like a pressure put on me. My mother loved painting, and she stopped painting when she got married, and I grew up in Tulcea, and Tulcea is it's a small town. People come to Tulcea to visit the Danube Delta. So there weren't like many activities in Tulcea, but she enrolled me into this kind of like after school activity, would be the best translation for here, and it was about painting. But we did not pursue painting to become the next Picasso. We have fun, and that was just something that I was doing growing up, in addition, again, to being an extremely fanatic. Steaua was my passion. I love Steaua. I mean, I love the specific, player, but let's leave it to Steaua. It was very a special bonding with my father. When I came to the United States, I had already been through a huge loss. My mother died because of breast cancer in 1992. So coming here to the United States, I didn't know that I would pursue this medical humanities program, but I loved theater a lot. I used to listen to radio theater. I watched theater plays on TV, and when I was a college student in Bucharest, I used to go to see plays. This is, like it was presented in the introduction, this is my 8th book, and it's obviously very close to me personally. I wrote the plays in English, then I translated them in Romanian. When I translated the plays in Romanian, it was an interesting thing that happened because there were certain things I discovered were missing in the original. So I went back to the English version and I just revised the script. To me, it's very important to hear the lines in all the plays, because when you are just creating characters, you don't know how they sound, you don't know how they present themselves, in a scene. So it's very important for me that the plays would have the next stage. All of them had stage readings, 2 of them here in the United States. One had a stage reading in the United States and the United Kingdom, and one play had a stage reading only in Bucharest, so in Romanian. I'm always grateful to people who give me feedback, because I know I can improve myself as a playwright. when I'm going to start with a very short clip that was from Mia. Mia, before I play this, Mia is the first play in this volume. There are 3 plays. I started with Mia in 2011, and I told Mihaela when I was doing research for my first book, there wasn't at that time a female character who talks about breast cancer. And I researched a lot, and I read memoirs about women talking about breast cancer. I saw catalogs of visual artists who were just presenting how the illness truly left a mark on their bodies, but I couldn't find the female character who was dealing with this illness. So it was important for me, not only because I have a history with my mother dying because of the illness, but it was important for me as a woman as well. So I started to sketch this character Mia in my head, not knowing that the play, the script is going to have so many other versions. When we meet Mia, she's cancer-free. 3 years have passed. But we all know that cancer is or could be in remission. It could return. So at that moment, I had this character who was the survivor. It was very important for me to have a survivor. But going through several drafts of the play, I realized there was something else that I also wanted to present to the public. And that is the idea of a previvor. I'm always at the intersection of being a someone who wants to teach others and the writer who tries, to use the set of emotions. So if you are familiar with the word previvor, congrats. You are really, interested in this field. But if you're not familiar with the word, it's also fine. When you type the word previvor in a online dictionary, you're not going to find results. The engine is going to ask you, did you mean, and then of course you go to something else. And if you go on the other hand online and you just type previvor, you're going to see the definition for that. So it's interesting that in the dictionary the word as of today is not. It is very important for me that a play presents not only conflict, development of character, but presents that word at least that will make the others curious. What is it about? And the word appeared in connection to wonderful developments in the field of medicine, in the field of genetics. Nowadays we can have a genetic test, and the genetic test is going to tell us how many chances we have of developing this illness. And because of this genetic test, the word previvor also came, to exist. People who discover the results of that genetic test become more proactive and decide what to do, whether, to intervene before they have a diagnosis rather than after. So there is this dichotomy like survivor, previvor, but they work hand in hand, I think. So in the beginning, it was just about Mia, the survivor. Her older sister was always there in the script, but I developed later Mia as the survivor and Meg as the previvor. Both of them are in their late 30s. It's very important for me. Again, the second thing that I want to address to the audience or whoever reads this, the play is an illness doesn't know of an age. But when I started to do the screenings when I was in my 30s, per my physician recommendation, I had always long talks over the phone just to schedule a mammogram, because I was asked, why would you do that? You're too young. And I was infuriated because there is no direct connection between age and an illness, unless maybe we talk about aging and dementia, maybe in that, if we stretch it that far. But otherwise, I think it's kind of irresponsible to assume that a body cannot break, or a body is going to break after you reach, I don't know, a number. We're not going to say the number. We are afraid of numbers these days. So I want to start with just this short clip.
Decluttered, alive. On the table, a selection of organic fruits, vegetables, and spices are still in their original package. Mia sits by the computer. At last.
I read that those who jog die too.
Die happy.
He leaves the room.
Crap!
He enters the room, half naked, with a minuscule towel covering his intimate areas.
Why didn't you tell me the shower was broken?
It broke this morning. I went out to buy a new one, but instead I bought this organic produce.
Am I supposed to stay covered in my sweat all night?
It's either that or you could wait a few more months to get your driver's license back and replace the shower yourself.
Some option.
Are you hungry?
Yeah.
Mark exits.
Try some organic celery.
Fuck! Where are my clothes?
Oh, I dropped them off at the cleaners. They were dirty.
All of them?
Yes.
Oh. I get it. Am I your love toy tonight, Michael?
I've lost my crown.
Okay, let's see. So this is the beginning of the stage reading. I apologize. This is the maximum, volume-wise. When I had the stage reading in May at La Guardia Performing Arts Center, after the stage reading, we had a discussion with people in the audience, and after that we had some meetings with the director. And we have discovered that one thing that I could do as a writer to connect the audience even better is to create small moments in the play where Mia talks directly to the audience, engages directly with the audience. And her older sister is going to do the same later. The director believes that this would be an opportunity for those in the audience to really realize that just because there is a stage, actually the situation, they could always be, on stage. They could always become part of the play. So it's more intimate because the play obviously talks about illness, a specific localization of the illness. The other thing that we want to do is before the play begins, there's going to be a list with a few questions, and members in the audience are going to respond to the questions. And at intermission, I will collect the answers. At the very end, we are going to talk. So the idea behind Mia is to talk a little bit about these two sisters who are fairly young, in their late 30s, and then to have the input from members in the audience. Working on this script has been very important for me, therapeutically speaking, because I knew when I started to create Mia that a part of me, what I noticed with my mother, her decline, is going to be transferring that. But I also knew that if I were to write the play exactly when she died, like let's say half a year after that, I wouldn't be able to do that because I would be too angry. So for me, it was important to have this long period of time when I could just let my anger go in different directions. With the director, we decided to do these moments of creating intimacy between the characters and the audience. And instead of just, as you notice, the spouse is coming from jogging. Instead of having that, she's going to be seated, and she's going to look at members in the audience, and she's going to say something very short, this one, and then look at him. So she's introducing him. And she's going to mimic, panting mockingly, and then we'll have Mark entering. This is very small in the beginning, extremely small, but we start with something small, and then we are going to build this kind of relationship between the actors and members in the audience. We don't want this to be immersive. We're not going, to expect anyone in the audience to come, on stage. We're just hoping, to create this moment of intimacy. Later, in another example of this moment of intimacy is also in the first act. Mia, I'm not an actress, so just before I read the lines, just keep that in mind. I'm going to read them differently than an actor would do. So Mia says, "Look at me." Half of her robe is at her waistline. Mark stands up and tries to make her put the robe fully back on, and Mia is adamant. She says, "No, thank you." Mia turns herself to face us. Again, that moment, we discover a big, ugly, real scar on her left breast. And Mia says with anger and disappointment only to the audience. When she's going to talk to the audience, Mark is not going to hear. So we are going to, assume it's just this relationship between Mia and the audience, members in the audience. Mia says, "I want to take my insides off, throw them, because they have already betrayed me, and put cotton balls inside me. The same way they make stuffed toy animals." Mark looks in his pocket and finds a bag full with cotton balls, examines them. Mia grabs the bag. "I've been looking for these all day yesterday." And Mark says, "What for?" Mia, "A project." Mark, "You are full of secrets today." Mia, "If you must know, I was imagining I was a doll. Doll don't have nipples." Again, when this is going to happen in performance, I have an artist. I've been working with the artist. She's in Texas, and she's a breast cancer survivor. And one of her projects is to work with dolls for a very specific reason, medically speaking, and for cancer specifically. And Mark says, "Yeah," because Mark doesn't know, doesn't have a clue. Now, Mia is going to repeat again the same things, but the second time he repeats verbatim the lines, this time Mark is going to hear her. So if there is a moment when we can say the same words in a play, not, for a movie, I think it could be beneficial, because unlike cinema, we don't have, the rewind in theater. So for me, it's an opportunity to say something that I want the audience to hear it one more time. Maybe the second time is going to be heard differently. So this is something that I have discovered during the stage reading of the play, discussing with the actors, discussing with people who came to the play. Collaboration is very important for me to hear the feedback, so this is why I don't betray the people who are diagnosed with breast cancer. For me, it was an indirect experience, so I cannot put myself inside someone who was diagnosed with breast cancer. So I have to be extremely delicate not to upset those who are survivors of breast cancer, those who are patients of breast cancer, those who lost, like in my case, someone because of breast cancer. So I have to be very sensitive. So that's one side. The other side is comprised of medical staff. We have the oncologist, we have the plastic surgeon, we have the people who provide the equipment in hospitals, we have big pharma. So ideally, we want them, to communicate. Ideally. And this is why sometimes, because they do not communicate, we have someone like Mihaela stepping in. because I have noticed when my mother told me she had breast cancer, I was the last one in my family to find out. I was the youngest, but also the last one. And I remember it was in Bucharest because my mother would go to have chemotherapy at Fundeni. And when she told me, it was just, a matter of pure coincidence. But she was on one side and I was on the other side of a bed. This bed comes, constantly resurfaces in my mind. But it was just, a coincidence. She didn't stage this. All I want to say is that when she said, I have breast cancer, because I thought she took me, on a trip to Bucharest. I love to go to trips, especially the capital. You can imagine growing up in a small city in communism. She was like, oh, okay, there are lights. And there is traffic in Bucharest. So there is something else then, the Danube is fine, but still. So when she took me with her, I didn't know she actually would take me to Fundeni as well. So when she said, I have breast cancer, for me, it didn't sink in, because obviously you don't want to hear that word. But in retrospect, I didn't know anything about the human body. So I think it's important, to have this two groups, the patient, the family members, and we have the medical community. Mm-hmm. And then we have people who try to express their emotions, but they don't know exactly how to express those emotions. And there are hospitals where, they try to open up to people who are not doctors, but they are therapists. They work
closely.
Yeah, but extremely, important, because how do you talk about something that is so fundamentally going to change your life completely if you don't have the vocabulary? How do you do that? You are completely lost. So on the one hand is like if you have the unfortunate case to lose someone, it's the physical loss, but then it's also you don't know the language. So Mihaela,
the emotional
Yes,
language,
yes.
And the emotional vocabulary
Yeah.
that seems to be universally poor, unfortunately. For whatever reason, there is a commonality, it's a common humanity experience of avoiding to teach from early ages how to speak about our emotions. And in order to speak about them, we need to know them, to be able to identify, to recognize what we feel when we feel, in order to be able to put words in those feelings. So I think it's a very interesting aspect of the play that raises the awareness of the importance of having and this is cliche when I say support, but I cannot think of anything better than that, but the support system in place to move through the experience of this type of loss. And it's not only the ultimate loss, but the loss that happens gradually. When you see someone becoming ill, and then that the days are numbered, and you have to live your life knowing that in the back of your mind. So definitely, I think I have so many things I can talk about this play because I absolutely love it. And I want to see it on stage. That's my ideal at this moment. There are so many subtle ways that you talk about different layers in this play, and this is one of them, the one that you just spoke about. But there is also the the conversations we have between the two partners, the conversations between the two sisters, the conversation with the doctor. I really like when the doctor said, I'm so sorry, and you described there that there is no affect of what he says, and she responds like, I want there is no need for you to feel sorry, I want to feel sorry for myself, or something like this. So is that the subtlety of observing how a professional, and with all respect, all professions are very important, but I think in the medical field, we know, those who work in the field of psychotherapy and medical in general, we know that there is this distinction, you have to be tough, you have to perform, you're a technician type, you have to, do whatever you learn to do, and don't deal with emotions while you do that. So I think that's what's,
Definitely.
what we see in the play too. And there is also, I think in the conversations they have, her and her husband, there is also that expression of how she doesn't feel emotionally understood by him, what she goes through. And yeah, so definitely going back to the opening line, talking about emotions, it's very important. And having the courage to express that, I think that's what we are missing, right? I mean, it's a vulnerability that we access when we talk about emotions. We become vulnerable. We are seen inside. So
in my case, because I switched from when I edited my last academic collection, I actually had a interview in Chicago, the other location of Seminary Co-op, and I said in the interview that I'm going to retire. then that was like, what do you mean? And what I had in mind was to switch from academic writing to creative writing, because it's way more liberating, language-wise, and just creating these characters, it's extremely liberating. So in my case, in my field, so to speak, I can make use of my imagination and real cases and transfer that, creatively. How do you open up, or how do you make those who come to you to open up?
it's a good question.
Do they want to speak?
Where do you want to go with this? Are you planning anything? Stage?
Yes, we have people in the audience.
Well, I think for someone who decides to come for therapy, and I don't work with mandate populations, so I see only those who come because they want to be there, it's a lot easier. So what is needed pretty much is a safe environment, being myself and attending to the needs of another and listening. That's an opening. But those who sign up for the experience of being in therapy, and therapy today, it's not luxury as it used to be, it's pretty customary. I think people just come because they have problems in living, and where to go? You go and see your therapist because that's the most convenient and easy. So they come in prepared to talk about whatever they experience, problems or not problems. Sometimes we are afraid to access an experience of joy or happiness because that may be unknown and intimidating. So I think, going back to your question, the safe environment typically is a great opening door to dive in whatever is there to dive into. And then it's a relationship. I think therapy, like a play, right? I mean, when I go to theater, if I'm not in a relationship with the characters, then nothing is going to happen to me when I leave the theater. So like in anything else in life, therapy is about a relationship. And if that relationship, we build it and we have a strong foundation for it, then things are happening. And they are not one way. They are actually reciprocal because it's a lot of growth that a therapist experiences in this profession. And we have a therapist here who can validate what I say, right? Yeah. So, I think that's... Okay. And then being inspired by readings and theater and everything. I mean, these are great sources.
Is it okay to ask a question?
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Okay. So do not you think that people who have cancer feel coerced by their situation to come and talk to you? So they do not come to you freely necessarily, but in order to cope with the situation that was imposed on them without their volition. So it is same as being,
Anybody else?
Yeah, being put
Yeah.
in as a part of mandatory punishment. So,
Well, I think it's very personal. It's very different. I used to run a program in Evanston in movement, a program for movement for cancer patients who were referred to this program I was running by their, team, medical team, primarily because they had difficulties talking about the experience they were going through. So in the program, we did only movement and used the body as an instrument to express the emotions that have been stored during the experience of dealing with cancer or chemo or anything like that. And that became, the language of the body was the language they could access during that time. And I don't know, maybe later on they could go freely for therapy to process the experience from the past. But I think it's an individual, choice.
And I think from a therapist's perspective, talking about cancer, I worked in hospice for quite a long time. And it's very interesting because people usually when they go to therapy, sometimes you want to instill hope. And that's kind of like, as a therapist, it's kind of like what you want to instill, with your client. And it's very hard to do that because that's not something that sometimes is possible. So it's a very thin line when you have someone coming into your office completely hopeless and kind of looking for hope in therapy, and then just kind of like it's more like accepting, kind of like, and that's, I think, the body is just like feeling this acceptance, because a lot of the times it's like you end up kind of hating your body, like you feel like this failure, like you failed in somehow.
Right. Betrayal, yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
So there are a lot of emotions coming with that.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, that's a great point.
I think there is also a disconnect, like going back to my own experience. I remember the disconnect. I was in the last year of high school, and people told me, well, you need to go to school, you need to do your homework. But my mother was not in a hospice. My mother was with us. So it's like it's a complete disconnect, and it feels not right. And also, I have noticed with members of my own family, the loss is processed differently. And everybody goes, with their lives, and they continue, to live. And we don't know what's inside, but they continue, to wake up and get off bed. And we could do that because there are obviously cases when people cannot even go off bed. They stay there.
That's a great observation. Well, psychologically, it's said that we never end processing loss. It's just that it's on a continuum and it's in stages. Because loss means when we grieve, when we lose, it's the feeling it's coming from love. So if we would stop, we would stop loving the person we lost, or the hope, or what we imagined life to be for us, which is part of the loss as well. So I think that's, it's a great observation. Everybody goes through it in his or her own time.
And maybe with that we can go to the next play. The next play in the volume, the way actually I wrote the plays, not the way they are published, is about, in the first play I was talking about Mia, and I was really interested in trying to look at the female body. In addition to cancer, there is something else that happens with the main character. She struggles to become a mother, so there are layers in the play. The second play that I wrote was 3 as in triangle, or the aftertaste of life, and it's the main characters are 3 men, and I was invited to this workshop in New York, and the workshop was about masculinities, and I started to develop these three strangers who are in a secluded space, and they've been there for a number of years, and I was interested what happens to, in this case they are men, but what happens to humans when are in isolation. Because there are three men, I was curious what could happen to them if they are portrayed like the strong man who doesn't show emotions and is always, tough. Can something, alter in their lives as well? So I was exploring that side of masculinity in the play, and I worked with several drafts of the play, and another issue that interests me personally is, since we are here just for a short period of time, what is actually that solid thing in our lives, regardless of the gender? So I started to question myself, what is that solid thing in my life, regardless where I am or in what stage of life I am. And for me personally, one thing that is solid is language. That is one of my solid things. But so it's not something, for example, sexually. This is something fluid. And it's one of the things that is explored in the play. One of the characters who used to be straight develops feelings for a gender fluid character. So I wanted to explore that possibility and to open the discussion to something else, maybe to talk a little bit about taboos. And the third thing that I wanted to explore in the play was about mental health. They have been part of a system where they receive the same treatment, they receive actually the same breakfast, the same lunch, etc. So what happens to their brain, and obviously indirectly what happens to their body because of this regimented experience. I don't have a video recording because the stage reading happened in Bucharest. I have some lines. I know we have an actor in the audience. I don't want, if we have volunteers to read the lines. You're just, going to see them as I'm scrolling them down, just to give you a little bit, of these three characters. The three characters do not have names. They are Chill 1, Chill 2, and Chill 3 to replicate a little bit with the idea of medical cases. Towards the end, they receive, they reveal, not receive, reveal their names. But in the beginning, for the 90% of the play, they stay as Chill 1, Chill 2, and Chill 3. So, do we have any volunteers to read some lines and help me? I know you are by default. Do we have someone else?
Chill too.
You're making eye contact.
Who am I chill to? Too much.
And then we need a third one. So, do we have a third one? Don't
And
be
can be gender fluid.
Yeah. Anyone. Of course. So, do we have... Okay. So, you're Chill 3. Okay. Great. So, everybody can see from where you... Okay, great. So, whenever you're ready.
Sure.
Chill too.
So who starts?
Chill too.
Chill 2.
Okay, well, sure.
Whenever you're ready.
Yeah, I'm ready.
Okay.
I bet what we eat is also a factor. Every single day we have the same horrible menu. Chamomile tea, toast, hot dog, Jello, and that's just breakfast.
Yeah, they fucked up our taste buds.
They tried everything on us without results. Infrared, light therapy, heavy metal rock, pills increasing the dosage and changing them altogether. So we are messed up completely. They even tried pragmatics.
Life's but a walking shadow, a poem, it is a tale told by an idiot, full of sound and fury, signifying nothing.
Now, the doctor claims we are the most antidepressant patients in the history of depression, which is something so damn subjective and debatable.
Life's a tale told by an idiot, full of sound and fury, signifying nothing.
Shakespeare all day long, like Jelly-O. Our doctor is actually annoyed that no treatment works. His fixation on patient zero of incurable happiness is blue.
Do you think the doctor is cuckoo?
Obviously.
Patient zero.
Read your chart.
I used to have this loyal customer. He came weekly to my butcher shop, and during the holidays he invited me over his place to cater for his festive holiday dinners. His house was always full of important people, but he wasn't a fool. He told me, "This is just for show. I invite them so I think I love holidays and I'm grateful and that our rich lives are the best and blah, blah, blah." But it's not. It's all a big lie. Everything is minutely orchestrated from the china selected on display to what we wear. There is no fun, no spontaneity. If you have not heard a billionaire complaining, you have not seen the grotesque discount they have with poor or simple people. He was whining about his life, not even knowing that I grew up in an orphanage, that my mom abandoned me when I was 7, no tears in her eyes, just dropping me there as if I were a wanted package, accidental order. I guess I was.
We know your story.
Okay, and thank you so much.
Wow.
Thank you so much for this.
Some actors
You didn't know you would do this, and that was just one surprise. Although they don't have specific names until the very end. They have very specific professions, jobs. One of them used to make perfumes. The other one, so he's obsessed with this idea of creating something new from scratch and making, life beautiful through perfumes. Another one is a grave digger because you need that in theater. And the third one is definitely a butcher because we need to have that also in theater. So they have these specific jobs and they meet here. They were strangers to one another. They spend a lot of time there. The play starts with the three men being seated not on they are not in beds, but they have these wooden planks. Because I go into an extreme, from the start. And I'm exploring again this idea what happens to us when we are isolated, when we are not in direct contact with what we love to do professionally, how our lives could change unpredictably. And these are, pretty much the ideas I'm working with in that play. I'll go to the last play because soon the bookstore is going to close. The last play is Suicidal Dog and Laika. This is the play that had the most stage readings in the United States and United Kingdom. It's a play that I started in 2016. In the middle of the last presidential campaign and obviously the election. I was consumed and actually pulled into this intense vortex of opinions about candidates, and it was extremely toxic. And I discovered that the best way for me would be to I wanted to write something, but instead of writing on Facebook, I decided to create these characters. And there is a dog from Middle East, and there is a Laika. And we have, in addition to these two animals, there are humans. So I'm going to play a clip from the first stage reading of the play. Not this one. The image is a little bit shaky, and again I think we'll have a little bit difficulties hearing, but this is the maximum for the volume. This is the scene is dog. Like I said, comes from Middle East. He is actually privileged. Financially, socially there, but he has this crazy idea to start a new life in the United States, and his plans do not meet, and he is completely down. He has lost all hope, and he believes that the only way out, his only exit, would be through the unthinkable, gesture. And in this scene, he meets Laika. We all know who Laika was. And I used Laika because she was a stray dog, and it was believed that Laika died pretty soon at takeoff. But I wanted to create this dialogue between an immigrant dog and a stray dog. So it's a little bit from that encounter in Afterlife.
That if there was one Earth for everybody, it should not really matter my nationality. On my way over to the States, at one point I heard a steward saying over the PA, "You are now flying over international skies. Enjoy. It's not going to last long."
In outer space, there's no country. There are no borders.
No nationality, no race. You saw stars when you died. It was terrible, but it was quick. I was in love. Desperately, hopelessly.
I don't think love has changed since 1957.
Love did not change, people did. Remember I told you Europe became free of communism and could not adapt to democracy. The UK had just recently decided it would want to be out of the European Union. Fuck all of those losers. We want to be out on our own. In Spain, the people of Catalonia want to have their own autonomous country. In other countries, they had started to kill their own people, civil wars. People could not stay there anymore, to wait to be killed by bombs, to see how their cities vanishing, as if there was an illusion made out of theatrical settings. But that is not the end. Massive migration invaded Europe, and with that...
With that what?
Hatred of the foreigner. Xenos, reloaded.
I still don't follow. Maybe you in love?
Yes. I was in love. Different religions, different backgrounds. He was not legally there either, but unlike me, he had not been adopted. He was wandering in the streets, a poor immigrant, a vagabond. He got caught and deported. I was actually happy with that happened.
Now I know you're nuts.
People hate more these days. They killed you in space, but on Earth, there is an ongoing man-made massacre.
You smoke pot?
What? You have pot?
Yep. I get this anonymous delivery package every other 2 months.
Who does this?
Yeah. Superman? Fuck, I don't know. It's there. I take it. I use it. I'm happy. Now, we don't have that fun. I was never in love. I got my eyes on. But then they recruited me for this famous mission.
I do not want a family.
Look, this is not space. Don't fuck it with your drama. I got time for your shit. I get it. You were in love. You got the boy. Religion kills. There's nothing worth thinking about anymore.
There's music. Do you have any?
Yeah, I have vintage records. Music towards the back.
So when they meet, this is a scene, Act 2. So when they meet, Laika has been there alone since 1957, the year when she died. And she's completely interested in what happened since she died. And this is, you know, a dog who is so depressed and nothing makes sense. And she's so eager to finally have company. One of the director who is from Belarus told me that Sputnik, because I went online and I found that Sputnik means spouse or partner. And I asked her, because I don't speak Russian, I asked her, is it true? Does it mean this? And she said it means to have a partner from point A to point B, but not like a romantic partner. Just, you know,
Companion.
yeah, exactly. So I didn't know this writing the scene. So like I said, so happy. And then, of course, she's curious what has happened since 1957, and of course the news, we know the news. So before I wrote this play, like I said, my final academic collection was a collection, edited collection. It was about immigration and Englishes. It is very important for me to always alternate these roles in a way of speaking, the one who tries, you know, to teach her students and her son, and the one who is trying, you know, I'm pushing my creativity to an extreme. And in that collection about immigration and Englishes, I work with several scholars, and they also enriched, you know, my perspective on immigration. In the beginning, I told you that one of the reasons why I'm doing this, why I'm writing or at least why I wrote the plays, was to teach something, if possible. So in the first play, there is that notion of previvor. I don't use in Suicidal Dog and like the notion of Englishes, but I speak about it frequently. As a immigrant, for me, it is extremely important the way I speak. I was once in Portugal with family members ordering something to eat, and my brother-in-law said, "Oh, you have an accent." And I said, "Yes, I do have an accent." And you can imagine, you know, a family member, you speak differently, but I'm polite right now. So with the family member, I tried to explain it is very, very important I could easily train myself to speak, you know, this perfect American English, but I'm not going to do that. It's important for me that my accented English has those roots, and the roots are in Balkans. And the way I write invariably is going to trace those roots in the Balkans. So with this play, the last play that I wrote in this collection, I'm talking about this idea of citizenship, and I talk about this idea of randomness. For me personally, where we are born is just random. And obviously I'm not in politics, so I'm not going in that direction. But I talk about, you know, citizenship, and I talk about borders. I don't know if you could hear at one point, like starts this idea that in space there are no borders, and he continues, and hopefully, you know, it resonates with other people. This is pretty much it, you know, in terms of my presentation for today. If Mihaela would like to ask any questions or add anything else, or if you would like to ask any questions, please feel free to ask those questions.
I have one observation and one question, and then I would love to hear from others, because we chat a lot.
Yeah, we do.
I heard you saying somewhere, don't ask me exactly where, that theater for you was survival.
Mm-hmm.
And part of it was the fact that it's dynamic.
Yes.
Okay. And when I started to read your plays, I sensed that I see the survival. I was trying to map it. I was trying to see it. Where am I going to place this survival that she experienced in reading and writing theater? And then I kind of saw it somewhere, but what I sensed more was an extension of it, which is resilience and escape. And when I want to clarify, when I talk about resilience in what I read in your plays, is not, being strong after a loss or an experience, but it's a resilience that it's bold. It's a permission that you give yourself as a writer, and you invite the reader to join you in that, to speak the unspeakable truth, which is bold, it's nonconformist, it's unconventional, and brave. And that's what I mean by resilience. And escape, I'm not referring to the fear-based type of escape that we all do when needed to survive, but it's a redirection. It's something that you create. It's a kind of a resetting a button, You reset, you redirect, you grow, you expand. And I absolutely love that. So my question, based on this observation, because I'm really curious, how do you navigate that? How do you move from survival to resilience?
Okay, the
to
formula.
Be exactly, yeah.
The formula.
The
formula is simple.
To be courageous, to have that, to have the guts to talk about things that we typically feel uncomfortable to talk about. And not only in the United States, I think it's a global epidemic these days. We want to be politically correct. We want not to offend. We want to be great. We want to be liked. We want to be admired. And you are so unique in so many ways. And that's what I absolutely like.
I started in the beginning by saying that while my sister was pursuing that thing, going to these national competitions and writing poetry, I spent a lot of time with my father, and he used to call me you are my son, he used to tell me. And if I say this to people like here, being politically correct, they would assume that my father messed me, for life. No, actually, when he said those things without even wanting, without having an agenda, he actually empowered me extremely, a lot. He did that. And I also, my father was my role model because he had his own struggles, and he was born in a village, in a family of 11 kids, and he decided just to leave the place, study, and pursue his own interest. And he used to be extremely sarcastic, but also kind. I think, or I want to believe, that I have inherited the sarcasm. I'm working on being kind, but I am. It's a struggle because my grandmother was extremely kind as well. So, but my father used to be extremely sarcastic, and because he spent a lot of time in communism, so that was his way to cope with the problems. So I guess this is how I'm doing it. Well, it's just something inherited. Plus, when my mother died, I discovered that although I had great friends, and I'm still in touch with many of them, I read a lot. I decided for me the best way would be to read. And I discovered people either in my situation or people who had a problem, a physical problem, and I discovered I was not alone. So that also helped me to discover you're not alone, actually.
Yeah. Oh, that's very powerful. Well, the new kind is speaking the truth.
Yes.
So you are doing really well in that department.
We'll see about that.
Of wanting to be kind.
We'll see about that. It's very...
it's uncomfortable.
It is, but it's also very
But if we
triggering.
have a choice between being uncomfortable or being deceived, I wonder how many people would choose the later.
It depends who you're asking what.
Yes.
It depends on culture.
Yeah.
I think we are moving toward that. Yeah, there is a unanimous movement now. Marius wants to
Marius has
ask
a
you
question?
something.
I have a question, one question for each of you.
And there you go.
That,
You thought you.
kind of cross-references
Mhm.
your expertise. So I'd like to ask Catalina if she thinks that her plays have a therapeutic effect on herself or on the audience. I'd like to ask Mihaela if she encounters high-quality fiction in the discussions with the people that come to you.
Want to go first? I can.
Yeah, you can go. You go, and then I'll piggyback.
So if I encounter, if it's a theme for therapy, or if people come and talk about fiction, or
If you observe them developing stories that are more fictional than real.
oh, if the stories presented are fictional or real. Oh, that's a good question. It can be, but I'm not sure if I can detect that, you know. I mean, the truth that I'm hearing in a session is the person's truth. So I don't know if it's fiction or real, because I don't do any type of, you know, digging in. But I can say when there is an incongruence between a presented topic and how that is, you know, developed. I mean, I can pick up on incongruences, or between the topic and the affect. I can say that, right? If somebody comes and talks about something really heavy and it's kind of detached or removed or unexpressive, so I would pick up on that and I would bring it into the therapeutic process as an observation to see where the person goes with that. On the other hand, I have a really good number of people who come and talk about their preferred movies or novels, and I use metaphors as well, and from there you can go a lot into what the person experiences or how the person sees life, you know, what's the lens that the person uses when they talk about a movie or a book or a play or something. So art, I think it's used for, at least by me, and I use a lot of movement in therapy as well. I use the body. It can be used to go beyond the thinking and the verbal. Yeah.
I forgot.
Thank
the
you
question.
for the question. Yeah,
Just,
thank you.
Very honest.
Was
Was
cool
it therapeutic for me,
Yeah.
creating, or for
the audience?
or the audience? For me, I only write about things that really interest me. So the outcome, I don't know how it's going to impact the others. It's very difficult to quantify that. But as far as I'm concerned, I always write if I'm really invested into something. Otherwise, I prefer to take long walks and listen to music and dance. And those who know me, I'm always on Facebook. And so it's really just if I have something to say. That's it.
It was therapeutic for me reading. Yeah, especially Mia. And yeah, I mean, in each you find something definitely that resonates. It resonated for me. And was, yeah, I experienced some catharsis in the reading process.
Yes.
I had a question about the language. So you mentioned, I think in the beginning, that language is really important to you.
Yes.
And you also mentioned that you, when you translated it in Romanian, you went back. And I remember when I was actually studying English, I remember that Cioran actually said that we don't live in a country, we live in a language. It made me think of you. But then my question is, you know, do you feel in the, like, in Romanian, and is that, like, how did it translate, and how, you know, writing in English and then going to Romanian, what changed, and what made you go back? Like, was it feelings or was it like thoughts or like act? Like what was the process?
When I was translating, it's interesting because many people assume that I wrote in Romanian, but I've been here for 20 years, so I use English on a daily basis, even with my son, who used to speak Romanian, but now he prefers, to speak English. So when I was translating, I discovered that there were certain things that felt differently in Romanian, like expressions, or for example, there is a moment in Mia when in English she says she is survived by, so she talks about someone who died because of breast cancer. We don't say that in Romanian when somebody dies. We use a different way, to talk about the family members who are left behind. So there, I felt translating the plays in Romanian moved them to a different emotional level.
So it was emotional.
Yeah, definitely. And then I try to go back to the English version to see if anything that I felt in Romanian would fit into the English version. And it actually made sense because the dialogue improved. Or at least it felt to me it improved by doing that. But for me, translating had a different level as well because, as Mihaela and many people in the audience, we don't live in Romanian. And as far as I'm concerned, I feel that I've been living here for 20 years, and the Romanian that I know is the one that I used back home. The words that I used, in high school, in college, I don't use new words. I'm still, so this is why many people say, oh, I haven't heard that word in a while. What? And it's like, well, it stuck with me. So this is why I use it without, difficulty. But I also discovered, I had moments when I thought I knew the word in Romanian. And then I went on Dex Online to realize, oh my God, no, no. And it felt like, oh, so I'm losing a little bit. So it's an very interesting process. And I think it's rewarding for the brain just to keep,
Absolutely.
Can you tell us a bit more about your writing process? You mentioned that you had the characters or the action in your mind. And so how do you write?
Just to interrupt. We are running out of time, but please finish this
Let
up.
me finish.
And then as we move into our signing period, I'm sure Catalina will be glad to answer your questions. Thank you.
I am... I say this frequently. When I start a play, I have a line, very strong line I start with, or I have a character sketched in my mind. But when I go towards ending the play, I'm never satisfied. I revise the ending several times, and that maybe should be, in therapy.
Yeah. That's definitely material.
I think it's something there because I question myself why I have a problem. And the endings.
Yeah. Well,
and that ends,
we'll talk. That's
Thank
definitely
you so much for
therapeutic material. Yeah.
Thank you so much.